From Burkina Faso's bold land reforms to South Africa's fight for justice, Africa is reclaiming its future. Discover how Captain Ibrahim Traoré is taking control of land ownership, empowering farmers, and resisting foreign exploitation. But here's the question: who truly owns the land beneath your feet? In Africa, land is more than just soil. It's history, power, and survival. But as governments reclaim land and rewrite ownership rules, global forces are pushing back. What is really happening with Africa's land reform, and why is the world watching so closely? Stay with us as we unravel the biggest land battles shaking the continent right now and the launch of a new land reform by President Ibrahim Traoré. Let's start with the explosive situation in South Africa. The country is at the center of a global controversy after President Cyril Ramaphosa signed in January 2025 an expropriation act that allows the government to redistribute land without compensation in certain cases. This move aims to correct the deep-rooted inequalities from apartheid, where white farmers still own around 75% of private farmland and black farmers own just 4%. Despite black South Africans making up nearly 80% of the population. But not everyone sees this as justice. Dated back to when colonialism redefined land ownership, often dispossessing indigenous communities and restructuring societies. The aftermath of such historical injustices has left deep-rooted disparities in land distribution, just like what South Africa is experiencing today, which many African nations are striving to address through comprehensive land reform initiatives.
1985, different colonial powers from across the world gathered here in the German Reich Chancellor's office. That was, at the time, Bismarck's office. Those powers included, but were not limited to, the USA, Great Britain, France, Portugal, and Spain. They discussed who was going to be allowed by the other powers to take different parts of Africa. Now, nobody from Africa was invited to this conference. The people of Africa had no say over what was going to happen. And the end result, of course, is that the European powers divided Africa. But technically speaking, the agreement that was made was each country would have sole rights to try and grab different parts of the continent. That is to say, if Germany were to try and grab this part of Africa, Britain, Spain, Portugal, they wouldn't contest.
This idea that some people came from Europe and took people's farm and then they have to be compensated. You know, if a thief comes into your house and removes you out of your house and then furnishes your house and then you remove him, how do you compensate the thief? This is exactly what we are being told. But I know Zimbabwe is being persuaded by the Western world that if you don't compensate our cousins, we are going to ensure that you suffer under sanction. You imagine what would happen if the Zimbabweans started compensating their farmers. They would be sending a wrong message to the white farmers in South Africa. They would be sending a wrong message to the white farmers in Namibia, because the situation is so clear. I mean, you came into Africa, you own 80% of the land. What is independence? Land is the last colonial question, and I don't think that anybody should be compensated. In fact, they have compensated themselves. They have worked this land for many years. Whatever compensation that they wanted, they have done so by engaging in commercial agriculture and deriving the profits therefrom. And if you check any of these farmers in Zimbabwe, in Namibia, in South Africa, half of their wealth is not in Zimbabwe or South Africa or Namibia.
Wait, let me shock you. U.S. President Donald Trump strongly condemned the decision made by President Cyril Ramaphosa, alleging that white farmers were being targeted and calling it a violation of property rights. In response, Trump suspended U.S. aid to South Africa and even suggested granting refugee status to white South Africans, particularly Afrikaners. But here's the twist. Many within the Afrikaner community rejected his offer, saying they are determined to stay and fight for justice in their homeland. But hey, people have been asking, why did Trump intervene? Was this truly about human rights? Or was it another move in a geopolitical chess game? South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has fired back, stating, "This is not about confiscation, it's about justice. We are correcting the wrongs of the past." But seriously, you remember also same issue with Zimbabwe, where in the early 2000s, Zimbabwe's government, led by Robert Mugabe, seized white-owned farms and redistributed them to black farmers. While this move was celebrated by many as a step toward justice, it also triggered severe economic sanctions from the US and EU. These sanctions, coupled with droughts and mismanagement, led to Zimbabwe's economic collapse, knowing fully well that Zimbabwe's land reform was a response to this same decades of colonial exploitation. Under British rule, black Zimbabweans were stripped of their land and forced into poverty. The Lancaster House Agreement of 1979 promised compensation for white farmers, but Britain reneged on its pledge, leaving Zimbabwe to fend for itself. "We were left with no choice," Mugabe said. "The land was ours and we took it back." Today, Zimbabwe is still grappling with the fallout. The U.S. has demanded compensation for white farmers as a condition for lifting sanctions, but with an economy in shambles, this seems nearly impossible. Look at how Namibia tried to manage its own. Since independence in 1990, Namibia has used a willing buyer, willing seller approach to land redistribution. However, with progress being slow, many are questioning whether more drastic measures are needed. Again, in Mozambique, where land reform journey has been marked by its 1997 land law, which acknowledged community land rights and provided legal protections. However, since then, large-scale agricultural and mining projects have increasingly encroached on local land. In recent years, Chinese and European investors have acquired thousands of hectares for commercial farming and infrastructure projects, often displacing rural communities. Tensions have escalated as farmers and indigenous groups resist forced relocations. The Mozambican government has attempted to balance foreign investment with local rights. But critics argue that land policies still favor multinational corporations over smallholder farmers. The rise of climate change-driven resettlements has further complicated land disputes, as droughts and cyclones push populations into contested areas. By the way, this is the same land issue in Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Ghana, and all over Africa. Land reform across Africa is fraught with challenges. Efforts to redistribute land often encounter resistance from established landowners and can lead to political unrest. If you are still with us, here is the blow. Burkina Faso is learning from South Africa, Zimbabwe, and others' mistakes, taking a more strategic approach to land reform. Burkina Faso is rewriting its land laws under President Ibrahim Traoré, Africa's youngest leader. Just days after Trump's South Africa announcement, Ibrahim Traoré declared that all land in Burkina Faso now belongs to the government. Yes, you heard me right. Can we say this is a smart move? Some call this a bold step toward national sovereignty, while others fear it's a dictatorial overreach. But why did Burkina Faso make this move now? For decades, land ownership in Burkina Faso was governed by customary rights, where communities controlled and allocated land based on traditional norms. While this system provided a sense of security, it also led to disputes, exploitation, and underutilization of vast tracts of land. In recent years, Africa has become a hotspot for land grabbing, where foreign corporations and governments acquire vast swathes of land for agriculture, mining, and carbon offset schemes. According to the Land Matrix, over 25 million hectares of African land have been acquired by foreign entities since 2000. In Burkina Faso alone, foreign interests have controlled large portions of arable land, often displacing local farmers and communities. But this Traoré's new land reform is a direct response to this exploitation. By centralizing land ownership, Burkina Faso is cutting off foreign access to its resources and ensuring that its people benefit first. This is about sovereignty, Traoré declared. We will no longer allow outsiders to dictate our future. Traoré further argues that this reform will prevent foreign corporations from grabbing massive areas of land for exploitative projects. His government has introduced long-term leases of 18 to 99 years, ensuring that land is used for national development. But the most controversial part? Foreigners can no longer own land. This means that powerful multinational companies, which have long dominated Africa's agricultural and mining sectors, are being shut out. Could this be a blueprint for other African nations to reclaim their resources? But land reform isn't just happening in South Africa and Burkina Faso. Across the continent, governments are taking radical steps to reclaim their land. So, what does all this mean for Africa's future? The continent is at a turning point. Governments are trying to undo centuries of land dispossession while facing backlash from global superpowers. Trump's intervention in South Africa shows that land reform is not just a local issue, it's a global battle. As African leaders like Ibrahim Traoré push for national ownership, the question remains, will Africa finally control its own destiny? Or will external forces continue to shape its future? West is terrified. Why? Because Africa is finally waking up to the truth, that its land, its resources, and its future belong to its people. But this awakening hasn't come without a fight. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Should land belong to the state or the people? And is Africa ready to take full control of its natural resources? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Conversation rolling.
If you are still not following us, you are probably never going to see us again. But if you are, congrats. You are on a journey of discovery as we unlock the mysteries of the past.